The water hit him like nothing he had ever felt before. Hot, clean, endless. For months, Sergeant Yamamoto had washed in muddy streams and cold buckets. Now, standing naked under American pipes, he wondered if this was some cruel trick before death. But the water kept flowing, and something inside him broke. August 1945. The war was over. Thousands of Japanese soldiers found themselves behind barbed wire in American prisoner camps across the Pacific. They expected torture. They expected death. What they found was something far more unsettling. They found hot showers. Picture this. You've been taught your entire life that your enemy is savage, brutal, inhuman. You surrender expecting the worst. Instead, someone hands you soap and points you toward steaming water. How would your mind handle that shock? The wooden building stood before them like a mystery. Pipes ran across the ceiling. Metal nozzles pointed down at concrete floors. The American guards barked orders in a language most prisoners couldn't understand. But the gestures were clear enough. Strip, line up, walk forward. Hundreds of men who had fought in jungles and on remote islands now stood exposed, clutching bars of soap like lifelines. Many had not bathed properly in months. Some had not seen real soap in over a year. Their bodies told stories of war, tropical ulcers, infected cuts, skin diseases, lice crawling through unwashed hair. The stench was overwhelming even to themselves. Then came the sound, the hiss of water rushing through pipes. When that first stream hit their shoulders, grown men gasped. Some jumped back, thinking they were being scalded. Others stood frozen, unable to process the sensation. This wasn't the cold river water they knew. This wasn't rationed drops from a bucket. This was hot, clean water pouring down endlessly, as if it cost nothing at all. Steam rose around them. The soap, harsh and chemical-smelling, created thick lather unlike anything they had used back home. As the grime of months washed away, something deeper began to crack open inside these men. One prisoner later recalled, "I thought I was dreaming, or dying. How could our enemies waste so much hot water on us?" To understand their shock, you need to understand what bathing meant in the Japanese military. It meant almost nothing. Soldiers were taught that comfort was weakness, that enduring filth was honorable, that complaints about hygiene showed lack of fighting spirit. During campaigns in Burma and the Philippines, men went weeks without proper washing. They shared single basins of dirty water among dozens of soldiers. Lice and disease spread faster than bullets could kill. Officers preached that true warriors embraced such hardships. Clean skin was for civilians and weaklings. Now these same men stood under streams of hot water, each with his own private shower. Soap provided freely, towels waiting afterward. The contrast shattered their understanding of both war and their enemy. But the shock brought fear, not gratitude. Whispers spread through the ranks. This is too good to be true. They must be planning something worse. Some remembered propaganda about gas chambers. Others wondered if the soap was poisoned. Many refused to wash thoroughly, only wetting their arms and faces before stepping away. The idea that Americans would waste resources on enemy prisoners seemed impossible. There had to be a trap. There had to be hidden cruelty waiting. Days passed. No one died from the showers. No punishment followed the cleanliness. The Americans simply repeated the routine, day after day, with mechanical efficiency. Slowly, suspicion began to mix with a more disturbing emotion: confusion. Within weeks, shower time became as regular as meals. Guards would line up the prisoners, distribute soap, march them to the washing area. No exceptions, no excuses. The Americans treated hygiene like military discipline. Everyone bathed. Everyone used soap. Everyone dried with provided towels. For men who had been taught that such routines were signs of softness, the forced cleanliness felt humiliating. Yet the results were undeniable. Lice disappeared. Skin infections healed. The constant itching that had plagued jungle fighters for months simply vanished. Bodies that had been falling apart from disease began to recover. The irony was devastating. They were healthier as prisoners than they had been as soldiers in their own army. As the steam cleared from those early showers, something became terrifyingly obvious to these men. This wasn't special treatment. This was normal. The Americans didn't celebrate providing hot water and soap. They acted as if such things were basic, expected, routine, like giving prisoners food or shelter, which meant this was how Americans always lived. If enemy prisoners received endless hot water, what did American soldiers get? If soap was distributed freely in prison camps, what luxury existed on military bases back home? The prisoners began to grasp the vast gap between their world and America's. This wasn't just about military strength. This was about an entirely different level of civilization. Everything they had been told crumbled under that hot water. Japanese soldiers were taught that Americans were soft, weakened by comfort and luxury. Yet here was proof that comfort and strength could exist together. That cleanliness wasn't weakness, but weapon against disease. They remembered comrades who died from infections that proper hygiene might have prevented. They recalled entire units crippled by preventable illness, while officers praised their warrior spirit of enduring filth. Now they saw that their enemy's approach was devastatingly practical. Keep soldiers clean. Keep them healthy. Keep them fighting. The showers weren't kindness, they were efficiency. Weeks turned into months. The initial terror faded into routine. Men who had once approached the washing areas with fear now lined up with quiet anticipation. The hot water became a daily refuge. The soap, however harsh, meant relief from the tropical diseases that had plagued them. The towels, thick and clean, were luxuries they had forgotten existed. Some prisoners began to take pride in cleanliness again. They folded their towels carefully. They scrubbed more thoroughly. They kept their sleeping areas neat. It reminded them of home, of Japanese traditions of cleanliness and order that war had stripped away. But now it was their enemy giving these traditions back to them. At night, in the quiet barracks, the real processing began. Men who had charged into battle without fear now whispered about soap and hot water. They compared the camp showers to public baths back in Japan. They remembered mothers heating water for family washing. The conversations were awkward, embarrassing. These were not topics for soldiers. Yet the contrast with their military experience was too sharp to ignore. In my unit, we shared one rusty basin among 30 men, one former corporal admitted. I haven't been this clean since before the war, another confessed. The admissions came slowly, shamefully, but they came. The showers revealed something more frightening than American weapons, American abundance. These men began to understand that their enemy had so many resources that hot water for prisoners was considered routine. Soap was distributed without thought. Towels were provided without hesitation. If America could afford such waste on captives, what did that say about their overall capacity? What did it reveal about the industrial machine that had defeated Japan? Some prisoners realized they had been fighting not just an army, but an entire economic system so advanced that it treated basic hygiene as a right, not a privilege. As bodies cleaned and healed, minds began to change too. Wounds that had festered for months finally closed properly. Skin diseases cleared up. The constant physical discomfort that had been accepted as normal during wartime simply disappeared. Men rediscovered what it felt like to sleep without itching, to wake up without the smell of their own unwashed bodies, to move without the pain of infected cuts. Physical health led to mental clarity. For the first time in years, Some prisoners could think beyond simple survival. The transformation wasn't comfortable. Many prisoners fought against feeling better, as if cleanliness betrayed their fallen comrades or dishonored their defeat. But the evidence of their own improved health was impossible to deny. And slowly, very slowly, a grudging respect began to form. Not for individual Americans necessarily, but for the system that could maintain such standards even for enemies, for the industrial capacity that made hot water seem endless, for the medical knowledge that treated hygiene as warfare against disease. In those steamy shower rooms, these men confronted uncomfortable truths about their own country. Japan had magnificent traditions, ancient wisdom, unbreakable warrior codes, but it had failed to keep its soldiers clean. It had treated basic health as luxury. It had let pride override practical care. America seemed to have the opposite problem. All the practical efficiency in the world, but applied with mechanical coldness. Yet, in terms of results, the American approach worked. Clean soldiers were healthy soldiers. Healthy soldiers were effective soldiers. The showers became symbols of everything these prisoners didn't understand about America. How could a country be both efficient enough to provide hot water in prison camps and powerful enough to defeat the Japanese Empire? How could the same people be practical about hygiene and devastating in warfare? The prisoners began to realize they had been fighting an enemy they never truly comprehended. America wasn't just strong, it was organized at a level that made Japanese military efficiency look primitive. The daily showers did something no interrogation could have accomplished. They broke down the prisoners' preconceptions without saying a word. Every day, these men experienced proof that their enemy was not what they had been told, not savage, not wasteful, not weak from comfort. Instead, America appeared to be something far more unsettling, a civilization so advanced that it could afford to be humane even to those it had defeated. Years later, when these men returned to Japan, the memory of captivity remained complex, marked by shame, relief, and confusion. Yet among the countless impressions carved into their minds, one image persisted with startling clarity: the showers. Men who had fought on distant islands, who had seen comrades fall in jungle ambushes and naval bombardments, remembered above all the sensation of hot water pouring from pipes, the soap foaming in their hands, the enforced rhythm of cleanliness that had first unsettled and then transformed them. Some never spoke of it. The shame of defeat mixed with the confusion of unexpected care created memories too complex to share. Others told their families, awkwardly describing how the Americans had insisted on daily hygiene. Their wives and mothers listened in disbelief. How could an enemy provide such care? Others remained silent, reluctant to admit that captivity had offered comforts greater than those their own army had granted. Yet, in private, many acknowledged that the hygiene standards of the camps had altered their perception of the world. The memory of endless hot water stood as proof of a civilization different from their own. Modern, abundant, and organized in ways that Japan, despite its discipline and tradition, could not match during the war years. The experience changed how these men thought about cleanliness, health, and national strength. Some adopted the hygiene habits they had learned in captivity, maintaining them for the rest of their lives. They taught their children that cleanliness was discipline, not weakness. Others used the memory as a way to understand America's post-war success. The same attention to basic human needs that provided prisoner showers also built the economic prosperity that would soon reshape the world. The shower rooms had taught lessons no textbook could convey. That strength and comfort weren't opposites. That caring for human needs wasn't weakness, but strategy. That true power showed itself not just in victory, but in how victors treated the defeated. For men raised to believe that suffering proved virtue, discovering that their enemy prioritized human welfare was revolutionarily unsettling. The cruel irony haunted many of these men for decades. They had been healthier, cleaner, and more comfortable as prisoners of war than as soldiers fighting for their own country. What did that say about the war they had fought? What did it mean about the cause they had served? These questions had no easy answers. They lived in the space between shame and gratitude, defeat and unexpected dignity. Through soap and hot water, these prisoners glimpsed American values in action. Efficiency, practicality, the belief that basic human needs should be met regardless of circumstances. The idea that cleanliness and order were foundations of strength, not signs of softness. These weren't the savage, materialistic Americans of wartime propaganda. These were people who had systematized human care to the point where even enemy prisoners received treatment that Japanese soldiers had been denied. The shower experience became a metaphor for the entire encounter between Japan and America during the war. Japan had fought with spiritual intensity, accepting suffering as noble, treating hardship as proof of dedication. America had fought with industrial efficiency, minimizing suffering where possible, treating human welfare as a strategic necessity. The outcome of the war suddenly made more sense. It wasn't just about weapons or tactics. It was about completely different approaches to human value and national strength. In the end, the memory of those showers represented something profound about defeat and discovery. These men had expected to find monsters and instead found a mirror reflecting their own nation's limitations. They had prepared for cruelty and encountered a strange form of methodical care. The hot water washed away more than dirt. It washed away illusions about their enemy and uncomfortable truths about themselves. For some, this was devastating. For others, it became the foundation of a more realistic understanding of the world they would inhabit after the war. The Japanese prisoners who stood under American showerheads experienced more than hygiene. They experienced a collision between worldviews. In those steamy rooms, with soap in their hands and hot water on their shoulders, they confronted the complex reality of human nature during warfare. Enemies could be efficient without being cruel. Victory could include mercy. Strength could coexist with care. These were lessons that no amount of propaganda could have taught, and no classroom could have provided. They required the shock of personal experience, the confusion of expectations shattered by reality. The hot water kept flowing, endless and warm, washing away not just the grime of war, but the simple certainties that had once defined these men's understanding of their enemies and themselves. In the end, perhaps that was the most powerful weapon of all. Not the bombs or bullets that ended the war, but the steady stream of hot water that began to wash away the hatred that had made the war possible.